Hello, my name is Jeff S., and I'm here today to talk about some instructional design principles. Here are our learning objectives for this video. We'll describe the signaling principle. We'll describe the spatial contiguity principle. We'll describe the temporal contiguity principle. We'll explain these principles according to cognitive load theory and cite examples of these principles in a short lesson. Effective instructional design can be informed by cognitive load theory. You see, our human brains have certain mechanisms with certain limitations, and leveraging these mechanisms can have a positive effect in the class outcomes. This theory describes three types of what are called cognitive loads. One is intrinsic load, which is caused by interacting with the material to be learned. Then there's extraneous load, which is caused by distractions or poorly designed lessons. And then germane load, which describes memory resources for working within the intrinsic load and not the extraneous. So, therefore, good instructional design should minimize extraneous load. And here are some principles that can be applied. The signaling or cueing principle suggests that some arrows, callouts, or other annotations can help learners. The image here is an example of what not to do. And did you see what I did there? I put this arrow to call your attention to the figure. And then did you see what I did there? I put this arrow to highlight the first arrow. And so on. So the theoretical basis for this principle is that these signals or cues draw the learner's attention to the essential material, and therefore to ignore the other material which is extraneous, because good design minimizes extraneous load. A spatial contiguity principle says that related items should be near each other. So don't have a figure on one page and explanation on another. Don't make the learner read a lookup table or a legend to understand the figure. Put important pieces as close together as possible. Because failure to abide by this principle means that the learner must spend energy scanning various parts of a presentation or flipping pages back and forth. And this is extraneous load and therefore not available for learning. Because remember, good design minimizes extraneous load. The temporal contiguity principle says that corresponding auditory and visual presentation should be presented at the same time. So don't have a diagram at one point in time, but its explanation earlier or later. Keep them synchronized. Because failure to apply this principle requires a learner holding too many things in his or her finite working memory, and energy spent keeping track of the separated learning material is not available for learning, and therefore extraneous, because good design minimizes extraneous load. So let's look at an example that applies these principles in the design of a lesson. Let's take a look at an address on the World Wide Web. There are so many websites and services available on the internet, and the number continues to grow. So an addressing scheme is needed to keep track of which is which. This is the Uniform Resource Locator, or URL. Here's an example of a URL. It uniquely identifies a website and a specific page or resource within that website. And in order for you To build your own websites, you need to understand the various components that comprise a URL. The first part is called the protocol. In this example, it's HTTPS, which is an abbreviation for Secure Hypertext Transfer Protocol. This is the primary way to send information from a web server to a web browser. Next is the subdomain. This is a human-friendly name for a product or a service or a department or a group or some kind of segmentation within the larger organization. Next is the domain. This is a human-friendly name assigned to the entire organization or company or institution or whatever it is. Up next is the top-level domain. This is the .com, .net, .org that we're all familiar with, in this case .edu, indicating an educational institution. Next is what is called the directory. You can think about this like folders that you use to organize your documents and pictures on your computer. It's a way of grouping similar files together. Next is the script. This is the name of the program that runs on the web server to generate the web page. And we're almost to the end here. There is a parameter and a value, and together these form what's called the query string. These are inputs to the script to determine how it behaves. Phew, that's a lot of parts. Yes, it's complicated, but the World Wide Web is a big place, and a complicated naming system is unfortunately required. And most end users won't care about URLs and this terminology we've just covered, but you, as a web developer and computer programmer, you need to be knowledgeable about the pieces. Now it's your turn. This is a screen capture of the address bar in my Firefox web browser. Your task is to name and locate the various components of the URL. Share your answers in the discussion forum. So, how did that work? Instead of dumping numerous vocabulary terms all at once, individual items were singled out, highlighted, and annotated one by one. This is the signaling principle. Each term was placed as near as possible to the actual location within the URL, and this demonstrates the spatial contiguity principle. And the narration advanced at the same rate as the slides, which demonstrates the temporal contiguity principle. And the purpose of all of this, remember the moral of the story? Good design minimizes extraneous load. This is Jeff S. Thanks for watching.